Welcome to today's webcast on how to fix your call center reporting, presented by industry experts from DMG Consulting and VPI. My name is Amanda Marsh, and I'll be your host today. To avoid interruptions, all attendees have been placed in listen-only mode. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type them into the question box on your screen. We will try to answer as many of your questions as possible at the end of the webinar within the allotted 1 hour. We will be requesting your feedback on an audience participation poll during the webinar and a brief survey after the webinar. And thank you in advance for your participation. We will also be sending you the presentation slides and the links to the recorded webinar tomorrow. I am pleased to introduce Donna Fluss. Donna is the president of DMG Consulting, the leading provider of contact center and real-time analytics market research and consulting services. She has over 25 years experience in helping end users build cost-effective contact centers. Donna is the author of the Real-Time Contact Center. She publishes many leading industry reports on contact center performance management, quality management and recording, desktop analytics, speech analytics, text analytics, surveying, workforce management, UC, IVR, and hosted contact center infrastructure. I'm also pleased to introduce Patrick Boats from VPI. Patrick Boats serves as the Vice President of Workforce Optimization for VPI, the leading provider of contact center reporting, quality monitoring, and workforce optimization solutions. Leveraging more than a decade of field experience as a contact center expert, Patrick works closely with customers to capture, analyze, and improve their operational performance and customer experience. VPI is an established company with a rich 15-year history of providing exceptional service and solutions to over 1,500 customers, including 1-800-Flowers, AAA, Assurance, Banner Health, CNN, Fannie Mae, Interstate Batteries, PNC Bank, Sony, and Walmart. In DMG's 2011 Contact Center Workforce Optimization Market Report and Customer Satisfaction Study, VPI ranks #1 in reporting and delivery of actionable insights. Donna will discuss the problem with call center reporting today and key real-time and historical reporting requirements. Donna will also share findings from DMG Consulting's latest contact center performance management benchmark research, including the top KPIs used to drive performance results. Patrick will reveal a roadmap for developing an effective reporting strategy, best practices for implementing real-time performance management tools, and share 2 case studies on how leading organizations dramatically increase their bottom line results with real-time contact center reporting tools and processes. Before we get started, we'd like to request your participation on a poll on which reporting tools you are currently using in your contact center. I'm going to launch the poll now. So which reporting tools do you use regularly? Please check all that apply to you. Spreadsheets, standard PBX/A/D/dialer reports, homegrown reporting software, contact center performance management software, or enterprise reporting software. I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer.
So, Amanda, it would be interesting to see the results.
It looks like a lot of you participated. Let me show you guys the results. You guys should be able to see the results now. Those are really great answers. Thank you very much for participating. And now I'm pleased to welcome Donna.
Yeah, the results, thank you, Amanda. Results are really interesting, and it's still amazing that after all these years, the majority of respondents are still doing things manually or via spreadsheets. As you can see here, standard ACD PBX reports, the second most highest rated answer, number D, contact center performance management, known as CCPM, third highest rated answer. So thank you very much for those. So folks, while there may very well be a few organizations somewhere in the world that are happy with their contact center reports, the vast majority of organizations continue to be really frustrated with the reporting that they get because the reports just simply don't give them the information that they need. Contact center systems give us a massive amount of data, but all too often, it just doesn't help us manage our departments. And making matters worse, data from one system frequently doesn't match the information from another system. You just wonder how that can possibly be. In today's competitive environment, where the primary differentiator between otherwise really similar organizations is increasingly customer service, managers need reports that give them two primary pieces of information, two primary categories of information. The first is real-time alerts and notifications that tell them about red flag events that need immediate attention. And the second is historical performance and trending information that can be easily manipulated and analyzed and presented the way that we need to see it. So now, let's take a look at the slide that's up, and I'm going to frame the issue a little bit more. Now, the problem with call center reports today is what you see here. First of all, we have way too many reports. I talk with vendors all the time who tell me that, they have 100 reports. They have 50 templates where users can cut, 4 different flavors from each one. They have a couple hundred reports. We get tons of reports, but not a lot of information. Amazingly, or maybe because of that, we end up in our call centers spending so much time, as we see from the poll on the right side, that we are doing a lot of manual effort there. Now, despite the fact that we have information coming from so many different reports, the data is inconsistent. You may get an IVR report and a ACD report showing IVR activities, and it may be off by just 5 or 250 or 250,000. Now, even if it's a small number, you've got to find out why it's off. Is one system not functioning properly is the issue. So it's not just a question of a number's off. It's what does that number off mean to your organization? Way too often the reports are not useful. It presents it in the way that somebody wanted to see the data, but not the way that you wanted to see the data. And all too often, on a next day basis or next week basis, it's great to have the information, but didn't help us when we actually needed to see that information. Along the same lines, we've got very limited real-time data, and it's really way too hard to create or change our reports. And even when we can do it, it's too expensive. But what it all comes down to is that the information that we're getting from what could be a huge number of reports just isn't actionable. It doesn't give us the information that we need to get the job done. So now let's take a look at the next slide and drill into what it is that we're looking for from reports. And the first thing that we need is we need real-time information. And we need real-time information for our supervisors, our managers, our team leaders, as well as for our agents. Now, from a supervisory perspective, what we need to do is we need to be positioned to be able to intervene in real time while we can still make a difference, right? If the call volume is high, and we know that the call volume is high, then we can cancel training, we can shift breaks if you're not a union shop, we can shift lunches, we can postpone QA sessions. There are a lot of things that we can do. If we know a customer is angry after they put in the customer sat scores in a post-call survey, we can get right on the line with that customer and do something about it while it still makes a difference. If an agent isn't where they're supposed to be, we can remind the agent in the right status, right? We can send a nice little reminder. Now, you know, it would be nice to be able to send a nice little electrical current, and by the way, I am joking. So we can't do that today, but the fact is, if we can see their status, if we're in the same shop, we can walk over and tap them on the shoulder and remind them. You know, if we're having a problem with our service level, it's great to know on a next day basis, but if we know in a 5-minute basis or while it's happening, again, we can pull the staff we need to get the job done. So from a management perspective, having real-time data isn't an option. It is a critical path. It is essential to the success of our operating environments. Now, agents is another story. You know, people have different views on whether or not we should or shouldn't give our agents information. Well, you know, some people say, well, they're not going to use it. Other people will say, well, you know, it takes them away from their primary task. All those are legitimate comments. The good agents will use the information to self-manage. Now, how often have you been in a situation where you go to give an agent, it could be a good one, by the way, an annual review, and you have to point out some negative things, and the person looks at you and says, well, gee, why didn't you tell me about this months ago when I really could have done something about it? And the answer is because you didn't, but if the agent had access to that information, they would have been able to affect the kind of change that they needed to make. So it is critical for us to give that information to our agents. If you're managing productivity, give them productivity numbers. If you're managing productivity as well as quality, please give them the customer sat scores. You know, if you've got an agent, a CSR, a tech, you know, a collector, a salesperson, whatever they happen to be, and they get a couple of low customer sat scores, that person, if they're committed, if they're dedicated to their job in any way, is going to go up to the supervisor and say, hey, listen, something's going wrong here. Maybe you can help me with that. So it's critical to have that information. And the sooner you get it to that person, particularly in real time or near real time, then you can have the effect that you want it to have on your customers and on your operations. So now let's talk on the next slide about some historical call center reporting requirements. It's as important to have the historical information. We've got information coming in from so many different places, right? We've got all the channels, calls, email, social media, I hope, all coming in, right? Chat sessions, SMS, all coming in. So we need a way of making sense out of that. What we're trying to do with the historical data is find the trend, right? So it's great to know that you have a surge as you're having a surge, right? So you can cancel training, postpone QA sessions, and get people on board. That's wonderful. But what's also important is to know if you're having a problem, a surge, every second Tuesday between 2 and 4 p.m. Because if you are, you know, if it happens once, it doesn't matter. If it happens a second time, it absolutely matters. And if it happens a third time, well, clearly you've got a trend, and then you've got to be able to do the investigation to find what's going on. Now, the same thing, by the way, with an agent. You know, let's say you've got an agent who has, you know, 2 or 3 latenesses, and you've got a policy saying if there's 5 latenesses, you've got to fire that person. Now, let's assume that we're talking about John, and John is one of your top agents, but he's just got this really annoying attendance issue. Well, you may be able to use the information to identify, well, John's not just haphazardly coming in, but late, but every Tuesday he's supposed to start at 3, and he comes in at 3:15. And it's almost like clockwork. So you can go up to John and say, hey, John, what's happening? What you may find out is that John takes care of his mother or father. And the person coming in to take over the next shift comes in late. Now, you have a choice. You can continue to let this happen, or you can change John's schedule so that he is an adherence, because this is a great agent. And with the kind of information coming from historical trending reports, we're able to do that. So clearly what we're looking to do is look at what our goals are. It doesn't matter, department, supervisor, agent. We're looking to measure the actual and then find the variance. But all of this is about determining what actions we need to take to fix the operating environment. So now let's talk about practical reporting tips. And this is what it is you want from a reporting solution. And it's going to start to sound really, really common. The first is you need to have the ability to collect information from all types of internal, third-party, it could be corporate systems. And you need to be able to do it without it costing you an arm and a leg, which is what it does in many cases today. Part of the reason we're doing so much manual intervention and so much manual effort is because basically it seems to be the easiest way to get the information and many times the least expensive. So today, we need to have a way of cost-effectively gathering that information. Clearly, we need to have both real-time reports because it gives us one set of information, and historical reports so we can do the trending and analysis that we also need to do. We need to have both reports and dashboards. They are not the same, right? It's kind of like almost the same difference as sharing information, looking at information on a website and your iPhone. It can't be the same presentation. It needs to be customized for what it is you're using it for. We absolutely all want to have a single system of record, right? We want to have one place we can go to see what's happening with all of our operating solutions. Now, very importantly, we need to have some way of being able to design and create customized reports. Now, what do we do today in many cases? Well, we either turn to professional services or, even worse in many cases, we turn to IT, where I'm sorry to say very often we have to beg. And it seems as if when it comes to IT, IT absolutely has their priorities, and there's no question that a contact center report doesn't seem like a high priority. But having that contact center report and being able to diagnose the issues that you're trying to understand could actually save your organization $250, $25,000, or in some cases, we're talking about $250,000. That report could make a huge difference, but that's not something that IT is necessarily going to understand. We need to have reports that are appropriate for each individual we're sharing it to. And by the way, your contact center reports, your contact center dashboard should absolutely be going to your CEO and to the COO and to the head of the business unit. But it's not a good idea to pass over a really busy report. You need to pass over a report that just has the KPIs that they care about. In the case of the head of sales, that person really wants to know one thing. How much revenue did you generate for me today? Now, you can put some other KPIs on, but if you give them one of your busy contact center reports, folks, you may as well not give that person the report. We need to have reporting and dashboards that are driven by business rules, but when it all comes down to it, and there's going to be a common theme, we need reports that are actionable. Now, Amanda mentioned that we just completed recently a benchmark study on performance management. So take a look at the next slide. One of the questions that we asked were, what are the top contact center or call center KPIs that are used? Now, this is a worldwide benchmark study, so results are kind of interesting. Now, the full results actually show, I think, like 30, 35 of these. So we just picked the top 15. And it's interesting that number 1 and 3 are about service level, right? Number 2 surprised us, abandonment rate. And we think that people are measuring abandonment rate because it's just one of those numbers that they can all get, so they think they need to. And just in case you're wondering, the best practice for abandonment today should be less than 2%, and it should be significantly less. Now, we also have some of the productivity numbers, ATT, average talk time. Now, if you look at number 8, people are measuring occupancy rate. And just a couple words on occupancy rate. Occupancy rate is the percentage of time that the person's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if it's a CSR, call center agent, then it's handling calls. If it's a back office processing person, it's how much time they're processing applications or packages, whatever it happens to be. Now, you want to be careful with occupancy rate because, yes, we hire people to do a certain function, but we also have to give them a break, particularly if they're handling phone calls. I've worked with some organizations who say, we have to have a 95% occupancy rate. I'll tell you folks, first of all, it's really hard to achieve, and it's really tough for the person. If you go to number 12 on this list, you'll see that we also have some more productivity numbers. Then I'm very pleased to see that 13 and 14. 13 was about customer sat, and then 14 of interest is about QA. So it is important to have both the quantitative, these are all quantitative, but the more science-oriented, the stuff comes right off the system, as well as some of the quality and customer sat scores. So now let's take a look at the next slide and talk about some of the real-time data that people are looking for. And you're going to see a lot of similarity between what we just saw on an overall basis and real-time. So what people are looking for from real-time is about 80% are still looking for those productivity numbers, how many interactions are coming in. But then the next two are service level. And there is a difference, by the way, between service level and average speed of answer. They're both service level statistics, but service level is percent of calls within X. And that is a much more exact number than the overall average speed of answer, ASA. Of interest, 25 years ago, everyone measured to ASA, and then they realized that percent within is a better number. But that percent within, folks, needs to be relevant to your shop. So it's a question of, at what point, it falls into a couple categories. What is the perception you want to have, and at what point, and if, from a quality perspective, and then from a, how much will they tolerate perspective, you want to ask yourself, well, at what point will they drop off? So, you can use that absolutely to measure your performance, but it's you can also use it in other ways too. You can see lots of similarities, and then if you look near the bottom, you'll see that total sales revenue, revenue per agent, and sales close rate all came in at about 17%. Now, this worldwide study included all types of contact centers, sales, service in particular, as well as collections and some knocks and things like that, but just a couple of those, by the way. But it is good to see that the sales numbers are on there because that's something that's increasingly important. And now, why do you care about sales numbers in real time? And the answer is because with the more sophisticated ACDs today that we have, we're actually able to get the calls to the sales agents who are hot at a given point in time. So we really do want to know what's going on. It also helps us in terms of determining what scripts are good and, which ones we probably shouldn't be using when it comes to selling different items. Now, another question that we ask, as you're going to see on the next slide, is what a good reporting solution is going to do for you. And the answers here are just amazing and tie back to everything that we see and tie back to the survey. Now, the first answer here, the top answer to that question, is so basically aggravating. We can put a man on the moon. We have for years. We can put people on the bottom of the sea and have them be able to pick up really small things. But yet it seems that no matter what we do, we just can't automate our reporting. 81% of organizations are still doing manual effort, and related to that, 74% of organizations said that they just want better contact center reports. Now, a good number on this is that 69% said that they're looking for qualitative metrics, and we're talking about QA scores, we're talking about customer sat, and that is great. And then the next number, 60% of organizations are absolutely looking to use the data the way it should be used. It should be used for the department, but it also should be used to help align the goal of the contact center with those of the enterprise, to show the role and how much the contact center is contributing to the overall goals of the corporation. And then one that I just, again, don't think will ever go away. It's a good goal, but it should just be what we have, is 58% of organizations are just hoping to get one version of the truth so that they don't have to dedicate so much resources to figuring out why one report just doesn't match another, or in order to even get the information that they need. So now I'm going to wrap up with the decision framework on the next slide. The great news is that there have been improvements in the area of reporting. We know, the industry knows, the vendors know how to do reporting better. The question of, for the vendors, it's always been a question of priorities. And there are now some much better reporting solutions in the marketplace. There's about 13 questions on here. I easily could have put 50. But here are some of the things that you want to ask yourself as you're looking at your reports. You want to ask yourself, are you spending too much time trying to find the information you need to meet the needs of your senior executives, or for that matter, even of your supervisors or other people in the shop, in order to be able to do the assessment you need to do? You want to ask yourself, all these questions, but are you getting conflicting information, number 5, from different systems? Do you need to beg IT or some other third party in order to create the customized reports that you need? Are you just simply dedicating, number 10, way too many resources? And by the way, if you got one person dedicated to reporting, even if it's lots of parts of different people, you're dedicating too much time. We really should be able to get the information we need from these magnificent systems that we have in our operating environments. Now, last one just to think about is, do you want your agents to have data to be able to assess their own performance? And what will be the impact and benefit, and if there is one for your organization? As you think about these things, then again, you're going to want to have that. So, this is a decision framework. If you're saying yes to, 4 or 5 of these things, if you're saying yes to all of them, then there's no question that it would be a really good idea to look around and see if there are some better reporting solutions. So with that, I want to thank you. I want to wish you luck with your reporting. And I want to pass the call to Patrick Boats, who is the head of Workforce Optimization at VPI. Patrick? Patrick?
Some of these stuff. Yeah, Donna?
We can hear you now, Patrick.
Okay, good. So great questions coming in. What I would recommend is if you could put the questions into the Q&A dialog box and not the chat box. We'll try to make time to get to those great questions and try to answer as many as we can within the allotted hours. We'll also, like Amanda said, we will be sending you the slides and the link to the recorded webinar that you can review and share at a later time. So I'm looking forward to discussing call center reporting strategy roadmap, implementation best practices, and sharing 2 case studies with you on how 2 of our customers are using real-time contact center performance management solutions. So what we recommend when getting started on a new reporting strategy, kind of take a look at how you're doing reporting today. If you did answer yes to 3 or more of those questions that Donna posed, it's a good idea to kind of step back and we recommend a Lean Six Sigma framework. That's kind of how we work with our customers to really define, by define we mean determine what goals we're trying to achieve, who are the key players that are going to be involved, define the KPIs and the metrics that we want to be tracking, and then the reporting means by line of business. So it's kind of this define, measure, analyze, improve, control. It's a continuous improvement cycle, but it really works well. So I'll get into the define phase, and then I'll also get into each of the other phases as well and give you some tips on what our customers have found valuable. So in defining and aligning goals, really the key is to look at your corporate goals first. You're going to have your customer loyalty goals, your revenue goals, your profit management and cost goals. Every organization has different goals, and I was just looking at some of the questions. Some of the goals are have to do more around compliance, right? And there's some companies that are really focused on costs, and some that are really focused on revenue and loyalty. So then you want to kind of take a step deeper and look at your lines of businesses. So for new lines of businesses, what we typically use is growth KPIs. We're really trying to grow those new lines of businesses. If we launched a new product recently, There's different types of KPIs we want to use. If we have market-saturated lines of business, we typically want to use retention-type KPIs, churn rate, things like that. We're really trying to make sure we hold on to those customers and trying to make them stickier, trying to sell them more either lines of insurance or more products to keep them stickier. Then you want to kind of look at your contact center management goals and determine what KPIs can we measure to be in line with our corporate customer loyalty, revenue growth, and cost goals. So now we're actually looking at our overall company goals from our annual report or whatever it is, and we're saying, all right, how do we translate that into KPIs that make sense for our company? Then typically what you do is the next step is saying, all right, we have our contact center goals. What metrics and KPIs do we want to measure our agents and supervisors on in real time, and then which ones do they not need to see in real time? Should they be seeing on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis? So to drill a little bit deeper, kind of take a different look at the KPIs that Donna showed, what we're seeing is, and the ones in light blue here, we're seeing a lot of foundational, we call them foundational metrics or efficiency-based metrics still being used today. In fact, the majority of the metrics, as you can see by all the light blue metrics that are up top, are efficiency metrics, right? These are metrics that many of us are still using today because they're easy to measure and they're easy to get, right? We do get these from our ACD reports or dollar reports. And just because they're available, we tend to measure them. Not saying that these aren't important, but they're more important to other people. They're not important to everyone within the contact center, and some of those may not be as important to the agent. For example, we're seeing average talk time. There's not as much focus on by many of our customers on average talk time. They're focused more on providing an outstanding customer experience or achieving either the sale or the collection, whatever the goal is, and focusing less on the talk time. In service and help desk environments, they're focused more on things like first contact resolution. And in first contact resolution, and the other metrics here highlighted in the darker navy color are what we call outcomes-based metrics or effectiveness metrics. These are metrics, and Donna referred to, that are focused more on the quality and the customer experience and the outcomes. Again, these metrics aren't as easy to measure, and that's why, you know, we're just starting to see more and more adoption of these metrics. But the good news is the new performance management systems can easily calculate these metrics, and we will show you how they do that. So just another look at those same metrics. So again, you have the light blue metrics below, and as you can see, most of them come from the ACD or workforce management, right? So these are metrics that are spit out by the systems that most contact centers use today, and we're able to take those and show them, you know, on a periodic basis to our management supervisors and agents. Not always in real time, but at least we're able to show them. Again, it doesn't mean we should be measuring all those. Then you get into some of the outcomes-based metrics, the ones that really help with outcomes and help improve the customer experience and the quality of the service you're providing. Things like customer satisfaction score. We're starting to see more of a net promoter score being used, where it's how likely are you to recommend us to a colleague. Quality assurance scores, attrition rates. Agent attrition rates is a huge indicator of not only, you know, how happy your agents are, but also what type of service they're going to be delivering to their customers. So are they happy? Are they satisfied? Are they attriting? And what is that relationship like with the supervisor? We find that the number one reason agents leave is because of a poor relationship with their supervisor. So that could be a cause of agent attrition. Average cost per contact and number of calls resolved by self-service. More and more customers do want to use self-service. A good self-service application that allows them to effectively handle their calls, their transactions. You know, if you think about it, you go to an ATM, you know, more often to a teller, most people do these days because they're able to effectively handle that transaction, and or they'll do things online, or, you know, I use online for banking quite a bit, and if it's done well, it actually improves customer satisfaction. So, you know, that's something I want to measure, but you can see all the different systems that it takes to measure that information. So now I wanted to kind of lay out the foundation of what's the difference between a KPI and a metric. You have many metrics. Every system pumps out, you know, dozens, if not hundreds of metrics. And what KPIs are, those are the key measurements that are really tightly linked to the attainment of strategies and goals within your organization. So you may only have a few KPIs, but you're still going to have many metrics. A KPI is also typically, it doesn't have to be, but it's typically a combination of metrics. So in this case, for this organization, adjusted calls per hour was one of their key KPIs. It's an agent productivity metric, but it's a combination of metrics. So it's a calculation, as you can see: talk time, after call wrap time, sign-on hours, non-contact work, and schedule adherence makes up this agent productivity KPI called adjusted calls per hour. So again, it is a metric, and the most sophisticated organizations, most of their KPIs are calculations. So which KPIs do we choose, right? So really the first step in defining this reporting strategy is just making sure we are measuring the right metrics. And we do, you know, entire workshops on what metrics should be measured for different companies, and based on their corporate goals. And really what you want to do is kind of get to the vital few, typically 5 to 8 metrics on the agent level is what we recommend, especially in real time. It's difficult to process any more than that, but you want to try to find the metrics that, as a team or as an agent, we have high control over, and if we were able to move those, there's a high impact. The trivial many is kind of where a lot of the traditional ACD and some of the workforce management metrics fall in. Just because we have them, if we can't control them and they have low impact, it's not really worth measuring them. So it's a good idea to kind of take a step back and say, do we really need to measure this metric? Is it really something we can control, and does it have high impact on the results we're trying to achieve? So, you know, now a little bit on what are some of the management KPIs that drive results, right? So we looked at our corporate customer loyalty, revenue growth, and cost goals. And depending, you may have a combination of those goals in your organization, or it may be focused on you know, different goals by different line of business. But here's some of the key metrics from a management perspective that we recommend measuring if these are your goals. So customer loyalty, first contact resolution, customer satisfaction, net promoter score, and then one you may have not heard of, customer effort score, and I'll get into that in the next slide. It's basically how easy it is to do business with your company. But that's one that's a really high, probably one of the highest correlations to loyalty. Quality scores are excellent, and then self-service containment rates. If your goals are really around revenue and sales growth, then you want to obviously look at revenue per contact, the average sale amount, sales conversion rates, upsell and cross-sell rates, churn rates, and then your annual sales per customer. And you want to kind of even correlate customer loyalty with revenue growth. So how many of you know what 1% increase in customer satisfaction, what amount of money does that relate to, right? And what does 1% increase in your first contact resolution rate, what does that translate into dollars for your company? So if you know those things, when you're speaking to executives and you're trying to get funding for more projects or things of that nature, you have a better arsenal that you can go to them with and say, hey, we improved SDR rate, which typically results in this much revenue for our company. So you want to know that. And again, these metrics come from different systems. It's usually calculation from different systems, and it's not really effective to do in Excel spreadsheets and things like that. But another one is cost per contact by channel, cost per minute. You want to look at the number of contacts to resolution, right? Because that's kind of a nice cost driver there if it's taking you longer than you could. And then agent attrition rates is another good one. I mentioned customer effort score, and customer effort score, this is a recent study by Harvard Business Review. They found that it actually outperformed Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction in measuring predictive behavior, so purchasing behavior. So it's one of those that you want to look into, like, is it easy to do business with our company? And at VPI, I know this is one of our key drivers, to make it easy to do business with us, right? So customer stat is great. And if you're measuring that, you know, on an ongoing, consistent basis, you are doing post-call surveys versus quarterly surveys. You're already kind of ahead of the game. You're kind of already in a best-in-class. And the Net Promoter Score, and more and more organizations are doing that. So if you're rallied around any type of customer metric, and your whole organization is, and all the agents and supervisors, you're already kind of going down the right path, which eventually will translate into higher profits, higher revenues, and happier employees. So, you know, just another metric to consider is this customer effort score, and that's something you can measure on a survey as well, just by asking the question. So what do low-effort organizations do? So really what they do is, ask yourself these questions. They don't just resolve the current issue, they head off the next one, so they're very proactive. They prepare their employees to address the emotional side of customer interactions, right? So the emotional side, there's kind of two types of transactions or interactions. There's the ones where the customer literally just wants to get their transaction completed. And if you could do that through self-service effectively, that's fantastic. And if it has to go to an agent, you kind of want that to be a productive conversation. Then there are other ones where the customer has an issue, and solving that issue is really the key importance there. But there's an emotional side where you have a chance to really hit a home run on that type of interaction, and that'll be remembered by that person. So not only did you solve that issue, but it's the way you solve that issue, right? Did you create emotional connection with that person, solve that issue? And then those are the types of experiences that get shared very positively with their colleagues and across social media. So, you just have to, a lot of these metrics you can also measure by call type. There's certain types of calls that really should not take that long, right, and should be handled efficiently. And in fact, that's what the customer wants. But there are certain types of interactions, and more of these are coming into the contact center because people have more self-service options. So really a lot of the hard stuff is hitting the call centers. On those, we have to be able to address the emotional side of those interactions, and a lot of that is done through coaching and hiring good people who have that ability. Minimize channel switching. We talked about by self-service stickiness, if we can keep them in self-service and they're able to not get transferred out to a live agent, that's typically a low-effort experience. And then using feedback, right? Asking customer, what can we do to make your experience better? And really using that feedback to reduce the customer effort. And then empower your employees to deliver a low-effort experience. That has to do with, not only giving them their metrics in real time, delivering personalized coaching to them when they need it, but also, enhancing the knowledge base, things of that nature, so they're able to deliver that low-effort experience. So what are some of the agent-level KPIs that we recommend, that we've seen really drive results? And we get these questions by a lot of customers that are implementing our real-time tickers and scorecards. So I put some examples here of customer service, help desk, sales, and collections. Again, these aren't all environments, but these cover kind of a majority of the environments. So when you're thinking about what metrics do you want to show in real time, again, in these tickers, you can drag and drop any metric in there that you want in your scorecards, right, in a performance management solution. But that doesn't mean you should, right? So what are the metrics that we really want to measure in real time and that they can actually have control over? Can they do something about, right? So typically in a service environment, adherence, number of calls in queue, adjusted calls per hour, which is that KPI that we talked about earlier. And again, you may have variations of these metrics. Productive time could be your utilization or your occupancy, depending on how you calculate that. The transfer rate, average hold time. These are things that they can directly impact typically. If you do issue credits, right, and you don't want them issuing unnecessary credits just to make customers happy, that's, you know, we have a lot of customers that track that in real time, the average credit issued, that dollar amount, or those points given. And then on a daily, weekly, monthly, these are things in addition to those real-time metrics. So you'd be able to show them the real-time metrics, but you can also show those on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. But in addition to those, some metrics that you may not want to show them in real time. Remember, 5 to 8 real-time metrics is typically what you're striving to, because that's kind of the most that an agent could typically handle. Not just an agent, but any of us. So some of the things are solve rate, which is kind of a version of first contact resolution. Basically, did the agent do everything they could to solve that issue? Quality scores, CSAT scores, coaching scores, coaching hours, handle time, and after call work's a good one because some agents tend to hide out in after call work. So, but it's not something they necessarily need to see in real time, right? You're not trying to drive the behavior of, unless you're really, really focused only on cost and productivity, you don't really want to drive the behavior of get this customer off the phone as quick as we can, get on to the next one. It's more about actually solving their issue and doing it effectively without putting them on hold or transferring them. In a help desk, you can see there's, you know, some of the things are there. It's really easy to track the FCR rate because there is usually some sort of ticket ID or service ticket number opened, so that can be easily calculated with the performance management solution. The escalated percentage, again, some sort of productivity measure. And then when you get into the daily, weekly, monthly metrics, it's you know, focused around percentage of tickets reopened, number of contacts to resolution, right? So how long does it take to resolve, you know, this agent versus other agents? It's also very important that you put these metrics in context with how the group is doing. So we always recommend showing the group average as well, because if I say, all right, my number of contacts to resolution is 2.5 contacts to resolution, is that good or bad, right? Do I know if that's good or bad? Well, if the team's doing it in 1.5, then, you know, I'm behind, right? So, you know, we always recommend putting the group and the agent's goal in there next to that metric so that they can see exactly how they're doing. Then you can see some of the sales metrics. I won't, you know, get into all these, but these are typical sales metrics. In a sales and collections environment, real-time data is so powerful. It's just amazing how agents will automatically kind of self-adjust and manage themselves towards your sales and collections goals. So very powerful. And you'll see that in the case studies that I share. Here's some metrics from a supervisor perspective in real time. You know, supervisors are the ones that typically need to see service level average speed of answer. You don't always need to show those to the agents, right? The supervisors are the ones that, all right, they'll be monitoring it, and if they need to make adjustments, they can. Longest call in queue, number of calls in queue, the agent status of the agents in their team. Again, and then more outcomes-based metrics on a daily, weekly, monthly view. So what we recommend doing is developing a balanced scorecard, right? So balanced scorecard is more from a management perspective, but this balanced scorecard, and if you look at what it does is it weights your top metrics. So you decide, all right, what 5 to 8 key metrics do we really want to weight? If you do more than 8, then an adjustment in one of those doesn't really affect your aggregate call center performance score, which is that number, the green number there, 52.6%. But that's a great metric from a management level that you can measure and really see how we're doing, trend it over time to see how we're doing. And then you can drill through and kind of look at how you're doing on each of the underlying metrics and what's really driving the needle. Then once you develop that balanced scorecard, we recommend doing it for each of your lines of businesses. So you're going to have your different lines of businesses, and they're going to have probably different things that they want measured. But again, then you're coming up with a very nice aggregate call center performance metric, and that you can actually, you know, if you have an executive that oversees the contact center operations, and they can see how each of their lines of business are performing on this balanced scorecard, I mean, that's very powerful information. So then measuring, how do we measure the metrics, right? So now we need to determine the data sources that we need to get those metrics, and then implement the technology to collect and present those metrics in the right way. So often what we see, and we saw it today in the poll, 60% of us today are still using spreadsheets. From the poll, it's actually higher in a recent Ventana benchmark study where they found that 92% of contact centers still regularly generate and use spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are typically error-prone. We call them spread marks here at VPI, right? They're typically error-prone. It's a lot of manual work, and that's one of the main things that just stresses people out with spreadsheets is it's hard to share the data. It's a lot of manual work. Sometimes you need a team of reporting analysts just pulling the data together into spreadsheets. So what I want to do is introduce you to contact center performance management solutions, and I noticed that some of you are already using them, which is fantastic, versus traditional reporting solutions that we see today. So one thing that contact center performance management systems do is they consolidate data across systems and sites. So it's going to pull all your interactions, your call audio, the screen video if you're recording screen, chat, email, IVR, and then data from multiple sources. So your ACDs, your dialers, your CRM system, your help desk case management system, quality systems, workforce management, any business systems like ERP or HR or internal in-house systems. You can pull all that information together. What the software does is consolidates all that and uses business rules to essentially send that information in the right format to the right people. So management is more interested in reports. Supervisors and agents, they use scorecards and desktop tickers. Dashboards can be used by all employees, and those are more graphical views of the data. You can now create custom metrics. And as Donna mentioned, you can trigger alerts on any threshold on any metric at any time. Again, you don't want to be over creating alerts, but if there's something that a supervisor needs to be aware of or an agent needs to be aware of, maybe it's a poor customer satisfaction score, then you can do that as well. It also allows you, and we touched upon this, to easily create custom KPIs and metrics. So this is interesting research that metric definitions, they vary across organizations. So the way you calculate service levels or the way you calculate first contact resolution is completely different than the way someone else does. So In this study, there were no cases where the most popular definition of a metric garnered even 50% of the total responses. Some people use surveys to measure first contact resolution. Some use quality scores. Some use contact center performance management tools to do that. So, and they're calculated differently that way. It also allows you to measure on an interval basis. So you can now look at your metrics on an interval basis. Well, why is this important, right? So here's an example of service level, right? Our goal is 80% for the day. If we look at the daily average, right, we did fantastic, 82%. However, if we look at how many intervals we actually were between 75 and 85%, meaning we weren't overstaffed or we weren't understaffed, right? From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. here, we're overstaffed. And then there's a few other periods we're overstaffed. There's really only 5 intervals where we really hit our goal, right? And maybe your goal is a little bit more lenient. Maybe it's 70% to 90%, and then you've hit more intervals. But the better you get, you might be able to tighten it, as you start measuring on an interval basis, tighten it as much as you can, maybe even down to 78% and 82%. So that's a pretty common best practice by measuring on intervals. And you can even measure on 30-minute intervals if you'd like. It also presents information in real time. So all the reports are in real time. You can do historical reporting, but you will have the data in real time. You can create flexible group structures to report on groups and teams in any manner. So, for example, you're not just seeing reports on a single queue only. You may have a team of agents that handles multiple queues. You can report on them. There's no limitation on the amount of data or how long it's stored. So you can do the true historical reporting and trend over time. And then they present a historically accurate representation of the agent's group assignment. So all that team data is retained as agents are moved to different teams. And that's some of this, these aren't things that you typically get in your standard ACD reports. So there's a value of being able to do this within a performance management solution. So I want to kind of go through some case studies, and I may be about 5 minutes over, and I apologize for that, but I hope you can stay on to join us for these 2 case studies. I think you'll find them real valuable. So 1-800-Flowers, most of you are aware of them. They have multiple brands. They were ranked number 18 on the Training Top 125, and very successful contact center operations. Why did they need a real-time performance management solutions? Well, they have a lot of seasonality, a lot of variability throughout the year on the number of calls they handle, and they use outsourced partners, and they hire a lot of agents during this period. What's neat about them is when we first started working with them, they had all brick-and-mortar agents, and now they've effectively transitioned all of them to at-home agents. And these tools, these web-based tools, have really helped with that because they have e-learning now, they have coaching, they have real-time reports and tickers that they can use, whether they're at home or in the office. They have over 900 at-home agents now, and this you can see the different systems that they use that the performance management system pulls from. Their goals are really to increase productivity, both of their managers and agents. They wanted to monitor performance compliance and really identify gaps in performance much earlier than they had been, and then get the information that needed to be distributed quickly to the right people. And then they wanted to invest in e-learning as well. So they debated, they considered either doing it in-house, creating an internal data mart, which is can be very costly and time-consuming, pulling a lot of resources together, or they also considered a multi-vendor solution, pulling different software tools together. But then they realized that performance management tools like what VPI provides could provide everything they wanted, including the real-time reports, consolidated manager and executive level reports, the automated rules-based e-learning, so it creates personalized training for each agent, and a messaging system that they can send out announcements to or trigger personalized messages based on threshold. These are some of the metrics that they measure, and I'll show you these metrics in a little bit in their tickers. But you can see they're very focused on customer experience and sales. Those are kind of the two drivers, and then productivity as well. Here's a consolidated report, so you see a lot of those metrics that I just showed across the top of the report. And what's nice is the reports consolidate all that into one report, so now you can see how one metric is affecting the other, and you can drill down. So any link that you see hyperlinked here can be drilled down to get into more detail, all the way down to the agent level. And they have these reports for different brands. They serve multiple brands, and each of those brands has different reports as well. Then here are their tickers. So for sales and service, they have a Q ticker. They make them super thin. I actually enlarged them a bit here, but they're super thin. They dock above existing applications. They're always on. Agents can't turn them off, but they can see how they're doing in all their key metrics, like the number of orders taken, the conversion percentage, the average sale. In the service environment, you can see this one's rotating. It's rotating faster than normally would, but I just want to show you that you see, how many, the percent resolved, you see messages, you see training, all that gets sent to the agent so they can take training on their next scheduled workforce management training session. It will allow them to take the training. And management has tickers, how their team's doing versus the overall center. Here's their scorecard. So if you click on the ticker, you'll get to the scorecard. And then the same metrics are now shown on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And there's some of the alerts that they send out. So if you guys are thinking of sending out alerts, this could be, a good guide. If conversion percentage is less than 50% and I've taken over 10 calls, then I want to alert their supervisor. If the average sale is less than $52, so if you think you're buying, roses for $29.95 and they don't, successfully upsell you to $52 and you've taken at least 10 sales, then there will be alert. And then they have customer satisfaction alerts as well. Here's a coaching report card. So as agents receive personalized training and they take the coaching, or even if it's just a message you send them, like a new policy, you send it out in the morning that needs to be addressed, they have to click OK on that message, or they take the questions at the end of the coaching assignment, and you get a report card of who acknowledged the message or who passed the coaching course. And then if you click on their names, you actually see how long they spent within each question and what questions they got right and wrong and where there's room for improving skill gaps. Some of the things that they quickly realized were 5 additional sales per agent per day just by showing the real-time tickers and integrating the coaching to the desktop, a 3% increase in sales conversions on the revenue side. Operational efficiency, they were able to reallocate FTEs, so the amount of FTEs required was less. They didn't have to go hire as many new ones during peak season. And then they were able to streamline their reporting. So a lot of things that Donna mentioned, they could now make cohesive decisions. They could have real-time and performance information, and they didn't have to print out paper anymore. It was all web-based. And then they have an e-learning tool, and the happier, more motivated agents delivered outstanding customer experience. So those are some of the things that they pointed out. PNC Bank is another case study. This is a shorter one, but it's neat because it's a collections environment. So you kind of see what perspective they took. They do inbound and outbound. PNC Bank, again, is ranked number 5 on the top 125 companies for employee training, so fantastic in that regard. They were Bank of the Year in 2010, and they're one of the biggest banks in the world in the Fortune 500. So they have a blended environment. Really, their issue was lack of manager visibility into the metrics, as many of you may have. You may have your data in siloed systems, and it's not really real time. So that was causing low productivity. and then they had little to no agent accountability, right? So because the agents didn't have visibility into their performance metrics. And it was really difficult. In a financial service environment, there's a lot of ongoing training. So for you that have a lot of ongoing new regulation, new policies, new ways of doing business, right, the ongoing training is typically one of the hardest things we see, in that we do great on initial training, and then ongoing training, essentially, we typically cancel that. In fact, here's a poll from Quality Assurance and Training Connection where, they weren't the only ones that had this issue. 78% of contact centers today typically reschedule training, and that training often doesn't get rescheduled. So it gets pushed off because of call volumes. So what I want to do is just kind of show you some of the results they had. They used not only tickers in the form of desktop tickers where the agents could click on the scorecard button here and open their scorecard, but they also have we created tickers for them on flat screen displays, more group level ones. So if you guys are familiar with the wall boards, those tickers can easily be manipulated. They're just web-based tickers that you can put on flat screens as well. So that's kind of interesting there. And they also integrated coaching as well, which allowed them to target e-learning courses and coaching assignments to the desktop. Within 60 days, they received a return on investment on the software, and they had a 16% increase in outbound talk time, 11.8% increase in blended calls per hour, a 34% increase in ASA, and 37% improvement in the abandon rate. So very successful. Again, in the collections and the sales environment, it's within 60 days is not uncommon to see a return on investment. And with that said, I want to thank you for your time, and appreciate you being patient and sticking with us. And I want to thank Donna and Amanda as well. And at this point, I kind of like to open it up for questions. And we have some really great questions here. Let's see. So this will start with Donna. We'll start with this one. How do you recommend building a business case to invest in a performance management system?
Well, the answer to that is follow the classic steps, which is that first you go through and you determine your pain points, which you can use as decision criteria to do. Then, working with the vendor, you want to identify the ways that the new reporting system can address those needs, and then you want to quantify the benefits of them, and then basically you want to do a cost-benefit analysis. Patrick.
Perfect. Thank you. Here's another great question. How do we control agents who tend to be wasting too much time in talking to customers unnecessarily?
Well, actually, there's a one-word answer to that, and that answer is training. You can't control them. You can train them.
I have to agree with that. I've seen that's where coaching really plays a key role, right? Also showing them kind of their real-time metrics versus their group so they can see how others are efficiently handling calls, right? We'll kind of get them going, but training is the key one there, and just making sure that they're not kind of wasting time. It's important to create that emotional connection, but anything beyond that may not be adding value. So, all right, so Donna, how do you evaluate forecasting accuracy rate?
It's actually just a mathematical equation. You look at what your forecast is, you look at what came in, and you do the variance. If you look at the concept of the balanced scorecard that I gave in one of my earlier slides, that's really all you're doing. It's a mathematical calculation.
Perfect. And then what are the most common vital few KPIs that are used? And I have some ideas, but I'd like to get your thoughts.
Well, you know what? Actually, on that one, Patrick gave a whole bunch of lists. And I'm going to answer this question, and then I'm going to qualify it. I'm going to answer it, at a very, very high level. First of all, the KPIs that you need to use absolutely do vary. And so we have classic KPIs, by the way. We also have new KPIs. But and they vary by inbound, outbound, they vary by IT, technical support, customer service, sales, marketing, collections, HR. But in the meantime, you have your traditional productivity KPIs, right? So your volumes, your AHT, average handle time, which is, talk time plus after call work equals AHT. You have your service level goals. It could be service level % within or ASA. Then some other goals you have within there, almost any kind of contact center, by the way, you're going to always want to have a first contact resolution rate, but calculating that is extremely challenging, and as Patrick pointed out, that is actually, that KPI is a combination of a variety of different metrics. You're going to want to have your QA scores, and you want to have your CSAT scores. You may very well want to have your costs. Now, then you start to get into vertical specializations, right? So if your revenue, it's total revenue, and it's revenue by agent, right? Or it could be the overall value. If you're a collector, it could be P2P, promise to pay, and dollars collected. And by the way, we actually do it on an hourly basis or a half-hourly basis because people's behaviors change within those time periods. If you're a NOC or a technical support, you're going to be looking at cases opened and closed, and escalations. If you're a pharma and what you're doing is managing customers' health, you're going to be looking at number of right party connects, and then some other KPIs which will vary based on what it is you're actually measuring. So there's a whole, so as you can tell, there's the classic ones that we get from our ACDs, and then each and every use, and then each and every organization will have some that are customized that they need just for their own purposes. Patrick?
No, I think that's great. The one that we see, especially in a service environment, that we have more and more customers measuring is first contact resolution. It's the most highly correlated metric to customer satisfaction. A lot of the other ones, like abandon rate and service levels, they're not really correlated to customer satisfaction, even though we tend to have thought that in the past. But first contact resolution, although it's more challenging to measure, it's one that a lot of our customers come to us to help measure. It's you can do it through analytics, where you're looking for, did this customer call in for the same reason again? And if they did, let's flag it as a repeat call. But repeat calls make up 66% of contact center costs typically. So if you can really hammer home and get first of all be able to measure it accurately, and then really get your team revolved around it, and your customer satisfaction, customer effort, net promoter scores, then those are kind of some of the key vital KPIs that we recommend in a service environment. We have one question here about how do you calculate net promoter score, and in my experience, it's basically a post-call survey where you ask, how likely are you to recommend our products or services or our organization. I've even seen some of our customers do a net agent promoter score. How likely are you to recommend this agent? And that number, that percentage can actually be driven down and shown to the agent, and they can be measured on that because that's something they can directly affect. Sometimes the agent doesn't have direct effect on whether the customer on the phone would recommend you or not. It may be something completely out of their hands, but how likely are you to recommend this agent is something they can't control. Another question here, does coaching hours represent the amount of time spent coaching an agent? And yes, that is the correct answer. And typically you could either schedule coaching within workforce management, or you could get that number by the amount of time they take. E-learning could be one component, or the coaching time that is blocked off with the supervisor. So what's the date of the Harvard Business Review? That was last year, I believe, that came out. So if you're interested, I can email that to you if you'd like to contact me. Donna, how would you define a service level goal?
Well, service level goal, there's actually a very specific context under definition. So service level is percent of calls answered within X seconds. So it could be 80% of calls within 20 seconds, which is the traditional one. It could be 70% of calls within 10 seconds. It could, so it really does depend. Now, I think just kind of to go a little bit deeper on your question is you need to decide based what your service level goals should be based on the sensitivities of your customers. So, if these are all multi-million-dollar customers, then you know that their expectations for what the service level should be is going to be extremely high, meaning within 3 to 4 rings. If this is a very low margin customer base and it's a commodity product and the customers have already been trained that they're going to have to wait a long time, then your service level can be a lot lower. Patrick?
Perfect. Great. Thank you, Donna. And then here's the kind of 2 related questions. What is the estimated cost of implementation of a performance management system? And is there anyone on your end who could help build a business case? The good news is these are not that expensive. Most of the data collectors to these systems have already been created, and that's something that we've developed over the last 15 years. So we're really, most of the time in implementation is not collecting all the data from the different systems. It's deciding what metrics you want to display in real time to the agents, supervisors, and managers. And that's something we do help. We partner with you to do that. And we do build business cases for our customers. We even do pilots as well. So we've done pilots quite often on a subset of agents, and then kind of show how that works. And if it works well, then expand it out. And every pilot that I've been involved in that we've done, it's always gone full scale. So you could within 45 to 60 days, you pretty much see the return typically, and then it's easy to scale up from there. So most of it is just defining what you want to be measured. Pulling the data is typically not that hard anymore with the technology that's been developed. Let's see. How would you recommend reporting cost per contact without the use of external spreadsheets? Donna, you want to take that one?
Well, it depends on who you're reporting it to. Basically, let's say it's going to the chief operating officer. I would show the cost per call, but very importantly, what he or she is interested in seeing is that cost is going down. So you can just put in one number and show that number for 3 months in a row and the quarterly average. And then, if you get into it, then you can end up doing quarterly reports as well. They don't want the spreadsheets. They just want to see the number and how you're managing that number.
Yeah, I've seen it kind of both ways, right? So I've seen it where essentially you plug in a number and it shows up on their dashboard. Or I've also seen it tied in to performance management system, tied into HR systems as well. So where they're actually pulling, the cost of the agents and also factoring that in the calculation. So typically there's a connection to, the foundational approach is to use performance management where you're taking the ACD or the dialer connection and you're pulling in some CRM information or some information from your system there. But we have a lot of customers that find it extremely valuable just to pull ACD information from either their Cisco via Aspect switch or whatever it may be, and then just be able to deliver that on a real-time basis in the form of tickers, scorecards, dashboards, drill-through reports. We have a lot of customers that literally just want to improve their ACD or dialer reporting, and that's not uncommon. But you can connect to HR systems and CRM systems and other systems if you want that calculation calculated just the way you would calculate it in the spreadsheet. You go get the data from other systems, but you're actually just creating a connector to that system. I think in the essence of time, and I know we're about 20 minutes over, but thank you so much for attending today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to the opportunity to work with you. We could, show you and your team a demonstration of how it could work for you and get you a price quote. You'll see how affordable it really is to fix your contact center reporting. And we look forward to the opportunity to partner with you. And if we didn't ask your question, answer it, we'll try to get to it on a one-on-one basis with you within the next week or so. So thanks so much for your time. Thank you, Donna, and thanks, Amanda. And on behalf of all of us here at VPI, you have a great afternoon and a great weekend.